Good morning. I'm here to tell you about Perl 6. But before I go on with that, hey, it works. Okay, so let me see. Yeah, this is the best place. Okay. So before I go on, I'm going to give you some background, and basically I'm going to give you a recap of my presentation about a year ago at the Perl conference in Glasgow. Anyway, in 1994, Wendy and I started our web development company, and basically we sold our first project before actually having learned the language, so that was good. And basically I really fell in love with Perl then. Fast forward a bit, in 2001, Wendy and I co-organized the second YAPS Europe in Amsterdam, and in 2017 we co-organized the second YAPSy in Amsterdam, which was the 18th already. In the period from 2002 to 2004, I actually wrote quite a lot of CPAN modules, basically related to threads and I/O layers. And in 2003, I started doing work for Booking, which at the time had 35 people working for them. As this was a company that basically grew in size at least twice as much every year, this meant that I didn't have any energy to actually follow any Perl developments. This lasted really until 2012, when Booking was 5,000 people, which is not the same as 35, and it was time for me to do something else. Meanwhile, Wendy and I also did a lot of booth endeavors at many FOSDEMs for Perl. We did booths at many OSCONs and other open source conferences. We organized a reunification summit in 2012. Actually, nobody on this picture is here. There were about 5 people in Riga, so that was good still. And I started, in 2013, I started working on Rakudo Perl 6. I did a lot of commits, and basically that's what I'm still doing to this day, if I'm not doing something else. One of the other things that I did is, because I was seeing Perl 5, and I felt that there was a need for having Perl 5 functionality in Perl 6. I actually started implementing a lot of functions, built-in functions of Perl 5 in Perl 6. Some of them are very useful, like tie, I guess, and others are pretty useless, like study. Does anybody still know what study does? It used to. It doesn't do anything anymore. So that was an easy implementation. I also implemented a lot of core modules and CPL modules, like listutil and hashutil and tie hash and all that shit. The reason for me was, if somebody would like to actually re-implement Perl 5 on the Perl 6 virtual machine, then they would not only need to create a grammar and make sure that all the basic functions work, but they also actually need to implement a lot of this functionality. So I've already did this for them, hoping that it would help. Anyways, I hope I made clear that I love Perl 5 and I love Perl 6. And about a year ago in Glasgow, I felt that the future of Perl was here. Basically Perl 5 and Perl 6 working together and going forward. In the meantime, I was also doing something else every week, namely the Perl 6 Weekly, which is now at 258 episodes. So if you want to know something about Perl 6, check out p6weekly.wordpress.com, and you'll see something there, except for the past 2 weeks, because I've been really busy doing other things. While I'm working on the Perl 6 Weekly, I do a lot of research and finding out what's going on in the past week. So I basically do a lot of research. And in this case, what I did is I searched Google for some of the myths that I found while researching for the Perl 6 Weekly, and basically Googled them see if they actually occurred in the past month. And in Twitter, I basically asked for give me the most recent ones. And I basically, well, I did some selection on all of the answers that I got to actually match my story. So it's not completely scientific, but at least it should be enjoyable in some way or form. So one of the myths that we have is Perl 6 is vaporware. And oddly enough, on Google I couldn't find anything in the past month, and Twitter only mentioned something from 2010. So I would say that this particular myth is actually vanquished. So this is a good thing, and if you don't believe it, there's actually a lot of things that you can download and basically work with. Another myth that I found is Perl 6 is dead. Now this one, from July 7, 2019, is actually saying, okay, it's dead. And also on Twitter, there's similar things from the past month, more or less. So I would argue that this myth is very much alive. Even though, if you look at what's being done on Recruiter Perl 6, like in the past month, 16 authors pushed 84 commits. So I wouldn't say it's dead in that sense. Another myth is Perl 6 is not released. And that's from 2018, so that's not in the past month, so I would actually say also this myth has been vanquished. And if you don't believe me, we actually had a release in the past month. I'm going on with the myths, and the myth just goes on and on and on and on. Perl 6 sucks. This is from 2015. Well, interesting on Twitter, but it's from 2015. And there was nothing on Google for this for the past month, so I would actually say this has been vanquished, which I think is a good thing. And to show you that it doesn't suck, like in Perl 5 or Python actually, or most languages, if you add 0.1 and 0.2 and subtract 0.3, you don't get 0, which I think sucks. Whereas in Perl 6, you actually do get 0. And if you actually, if you actually take 222 to the power of 222, in Perl 6 you actually do get a very big number. In Perl 5 you get something close to it, namely infinity. Or minus, whatever, yeah. Perl 6 is slow. Well, on Google, pretty recently, this is an article that came out, or actually a thread on Reddit that has been the source of many of these myths. And yeah, you can actually see that it's pretty recent, everything. So I would say this myth is very much alive. However, if you compare this to Perl 5 loading Moose, which basically Perl 6 has Moose built in, and if you are a modern Perl user, you probably use Moose. So I think the comparison is a little, it is valid. Perl 5 is actually slower than Perl 6. Also, Jonathan gave a very interesting talk at PerlCon in Riga, which you should be able to find on YouTube soonish. I'm looking at Lee. Where's Lee? Okay, well, I guess Lee doesn't know. It's been recorded, but it's only available right now as a single stream for the whole day. It still needs to be cut up, so it's not so easy to work with, but you'll find it soon enough. Yeah, that's true. So that's day 3 of the conference in the dollar room. Did you cut up the streams already? No, okay. So Perl 6 isn't Perl. This is a myth that apparently is still pretty alive, unfortunately. But the funny thing is, we have a Perl weekly challenge for the past 4 months now, And more Perl 5 people are starting to actually get their toes wet in Perl 6. And somebody did this the other week and basically wrote this piece of code that if this is the Perl 6 version. Now, there's two things that show that it is Perl 6 and not Perl 5. One of them is this one, chomp. Basically the idea that you have to remove the new line from whenever you're reading lines. Now by default, Perl 6 does that for you. So you don't actually have to do that. And the way it's been used here, it actually doesn't do anything. So we can just get rid of that. And the other thing is that this parens should actually be in front of the lines to make it valid Perl 5. If you would have a sub called lines. But I think you will see that this you can program Perl 5 and Perl 6 very easily. And it will still work. So yes, it is a different language, but you can program Perl 5 and Perl 6 very much if you want to. Perl 6 isn't finished. Again, this is something that seems to be still alive, also on Twitter. So I would say this myth is very much alive, but yeah, we have releases, so I would say it is released, but yeah, what can you say about that? Another myth we have, yeah, I'm just going on, it will stop, don't worry. Perl 6 is inconsistent. Again, this appears to be very live in that same thread on Reddit. So yes, very much alive. But I would like to give you this here. There's a piece of code here. You could almost say it's Perl 5, were it not that there are no parens here. So when we have a curly brace at the end of the line, it means end of statement. Always. Right? Whether that's part of a block, whether that's part of an if, whether that's part of accessing a key in a hash, it means end of line. I think this is very consistent. Also, when you have something between curlies, it means code. So this is a block with a piece of code in it. This is code inside a double quoted string. This is code inside an if. And this is code inside where you expect a key. Now in Perl 5 this case is ambiguous. You can specify bare words there, but if the bare word happens to be a sub, it will execute a sub if I remember correctly. So here it means code, so you have to put it with quotes. There's another syntax for just using bare words, and it uses the, well, get into Perl 6, you see it. And here I put a block into a variable. If I want to call that block, I would basically just have to put parens after it. That means whatever is on the left side of the two parens means call it. You can put parameters in there if you want to, that's fine. So you can do that like this, or you can actually do this inside a quota string as well if you want, as long as you indicate that you want to execute it by putting the parens there. So I would argue Perl 6 is very consistent. Perl 6 is too complicated. Well, it appears that this is also very much alive. I'm not sure what I can say about that. I mean, I think complexity is in the eye of the beholder. What may seem complex to some may seem like very easy to others. I think there's a matter of getting used to some of the parts of the language. Like if you're coming from Perl, you want to go to Python, it all seems really weird as well. So there's stuff that you need to get used to. Perl 6 is unreadable line noise. And I'm afraid this is also very much alive. So, again, readability is in the eye of the beholder. People have used Perl to create unreadable code specifically. You can also do that in Perl 6 if you want to. you don't need to. Perl 6 has a bizarre ecosystem. This appears to be very much alive as a myth. So yes, very much alive. I can only say the equivalent of cpan-m that we have in Perl 6 is called Zef. If I just say Zef install that module, it will be slightly more verbose than cpan-m, but it will do the job just as easily for you. So from a user point of view, I would say the things that happen behind the scenes might be slightly more complicated than we would expect for cpan-m, but as a user you don't notice that. Yeah, almost there. Halfway through the slides now. Perl 6 has no killer app. And again, this actually seems to be true. And I actually think that's a fact. The only thing I can say about that, Perl 6 does not have a killer app yet. We will get some at one point or another. Well, yeah, the thing is, I discussed this with Jonathan, and Jonathan doesn't consider it an app. Okay, it may be a killer framework or a killer library, but it's not a killer app. Crow. It's the stuff you need to build microservices. Okay, I'll leave it here. Perl 6 has no books. You can see that over there. Unfortunately, that appears to be very much alive. There's actually a website called Perl 6 Books, if I remember correctly, that actually shows the books that currently are available. In Riga, somebody pointed out, well, there's one missing by Moritz, but the funny thing is that the person who maintains this web page is Moritz. So, Moritz, if you're looking, okay.
Also, the book on the top doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And there's another book missing by Andrusito. So, using Perl 6, it's missing from this page.
Yeah. So I think we need to look at this. But I mean, the myth was there are no books, and I would say that we actually dispelled that myth here. There is no other page that I know of, anyway. Okay, Perl 6 has no niche. This appears to be a thing nowadays with all media, and we have demographics. We have to have a niche, and Perl 6 definitely does not have a niche. At least that's the myth that we have here, and we actually don't have a demographic either. I would say yes, this is a fact. I would also say we don't have any niches yet. So, like JJ's work on evolutionary algorithms, that could be a niche. Or maybe that's already a niche. So, there you go. Another myth that we have is Perl 6 has no IDE. What's an IDE, you say? Older people here, maybe people don't know what an IDE is. Check. So this is something that all the young people use, apparently. My IDE is still VI, but yeah, well, Vim, I should say. And yes, this is very much alive, I would say. The thing is, Perl 6 has an IDE. It's called Comma. And it's out now. It actually has a free community version. And if you want to really have all of the whistles and bells before everybody else that uses the free version, then you can pay 120 euros a year for getting that. And I should say that this is the development environment that Jonathan uses himself. And I found him beating me in fixing several problems recently, so I'm seriously looking into migrating my head from Vim to Comma for this. Perl 6 has no REPL. Everybody knows what REPL is, right? a REPL. That's something that all the young people use nowadays as well. It's a read, evaluate, print loop. Yep. Oh. Well, anyway. Okay. Yes, this has been vanquished. And to give you an example, you just type in Perl 6. It will tell you how to actually exit, which is useful for some people. You can just type in an expression, or like multiply the string, make a list of 3 elements with the string foo in it, or make a single string with bar. Note that compared to Perl 5, we have XX for the list version of X in Perl 5 to really make it visible what you want to do. Perl 6 is too little, too late. I would say this is very much alive. Peace, canker. Anyway, this is very much alive. Perl 6 may be too late, right? But I would say it's very much alive. It's not little. We're looking at Recruiter Perl 6 at 31,000 commits. We have 229 contributors, and if you look at the documentation, we already have 12,000 commits, and we have 259 contributors. So little it is not. And this is actually excluding the commits to NQP and MoreVM, which are in similar sizes. The myth Perl 6 has no serious users is very much alive. July 17. So yes, very much alive. Actually, this afternoon, a guy called Frits Sauker, yay, will give a presentation about a production app for turning EU regulations into something that companies can actually use to actually do their stuff. I think I'm free enough and now I describe it like that. Frits will be talking to you this afternoon about this. So I would say that myth is not true anymore. We do have serious uses for it. Perl 6 is the next version of Perl. This myth, again, seems to be very much alive. However, if you go to the documentation, it says Perl 5 and Perl 6 are sister languages. So Perl 6 is no longer intended to be the successor of Perl 5. The myth, Perl 6 has damaged Perl 5. This is also very much alive. And I would actually argue that this is a fact. Going through all of this for many years, it's become clear to me that yes, Perl 6 has damaged Perl 5. If it were not for the Osborne effect initially, everybody remember the Osborne 1? It was heavy. It had a screen. Yeah. And nobody bought it because they announced it too early. It took too long to arrive. If you look very carefully, if you read the whole article on Wikipedia about this, it actually showed that it was not just that. It was also that the competitors actually had better and cheaper machines. There is an analogy here, but okay. Going down. Fact is that CPAN uploads have been dwindling. This is actually from a blog post a few weeks ago by a Perl 5 person, not a Perl 6 person. And after investigating this a little better, this is actually very positive representation. Because there's one guy who's responsible for about 25% of uploads on CPAN. There's another guy who's doing a pull request every day, who indirectly may be responsible for 30 uploads a month. And So I think it's actually worse than this. Some deduced fact that I have, I would say in 2019, about 4% of developers worldwide is still using Perl 5. This is really work here. So assuming we had about 3 million developers in 2000, and a third of those were actually using Perl 5 in 2000. Assuming that we still have the same number of programmers using Perl 5, which I think is maybe a little positive, and the fact that in 2019 we have 25 million software developers worldwide, we're now looking at about 4%. So this becomes clearer if you look at other things like the Reddit Python thing. Discussions has almost 400,000 members. Perl 5 and actually Perl 6, this is together, has 12,000 members, and Perl 6 has what, 1,600 members. If you look at Stack Overflow questions, 1.2 million Python questions, 63,000 Perl 5 questions. Either Perl 5 is an excellent language that never has any, you have never any questions about it. I think this is actually, we should not underestimate the value of Perl monks in this respect. Because Perl monks for the years and years and years have to be the place where people would go for Perl 5 questions. So they would not show up at Stack Overflow. So I think this is actually slightly biased.
The same for IRC. IRC has been a place where many people have asked Perl questions and got them immediately.
Yeah.
They're not lost.
Yeah, indeed. And for Perl 6 we're actually at 1100 now. So after seeing all of this, are you depressed? Well, I know I am. And I started to realize, well, maybe the future of Perl is here, but not like we want it to be. Now, Larry in his video at PerlCon basically indicated that the sister languages are now grown up enough to actually decide for themselves what they want to do. So I think the Perl communities need to figure out how to deal with themselves and how to deal with each other. And for that, in the Perl 6 side, we actually have started earlier this year a problem-solving repo for stuff that we need to have some kind of consensus on within Perl 6. Anyone is welcome to submit initial proposal as a comment. So here you go, you can do that. And this is exactly what I did. About a week ago. Perl in a name, Perl 6 is confusing and irritating. We all agree that Perl 6 was initially intended to be the successor of Perl, the next version of Perl. But things have worked out differently. And in 2008 it was decided that they were sister languages. And I think Perl 5 people have a valid point if they say that Perl 6 is squatting on the name Perl. So I'm proposing to change the name to Camellia Programming Language, or Camellia for short. The reasons are Camellia Programming Language already brings you to the right place at the moment. The logo mascot, Camellia, would not need any changing. Camellia in its name, notice there's a camel in there, something Perlish in it. The concept of Camellia being an implementation of a specification still would stand. With Rakudo, the alternative to use Rakudo as a language would be confusing because that's the compiler and not the language. Choosing another name like Albus that Damien Conway has used a few times when he wants to actually get people to come to his presentation, knowing that if anything Perlish would be in there, they wouldn't come. And Camellia logo is still copyrighted Larry Wall, so he would still be connected to all of this. So this was about a week ago. What does this all mean? It's a serious proposal to change the name of Perl 6 to Camellia. without needing the approval of Larry Wall, just needing consensus of the current Perl 6 core developers only. It's nothing more, nothing less than that. It should remove the squat of Perl 6 on the name Perl. It should allow Perl to continue to refer to Perl 5. If you looked at the program of PerlCon and you looked at the presentations that had the word Perl in it, in the title, they were all about Perl 5. Everybody knew if it has Perl in it, it is Perl 5. There's no arguing there, this is fact. If you go on the internet, if people talk about Perl, it's about Perl 5. It should also allow Perl to use a version number higher than 6 eventually. Not necessarily 7. The idea is basically that the next version of Perl 5 will be Perl 32. Because we're at Perl 530 right now, so the idea is that the 5 will just be dropped and it will be Perl 32 next year. So, will this split up the community? Will it? Should it? Should it not? I mean, these are questions that we need to figure out for ourselves. I have no answer for that. In a lot of ways, this to me feels like we're a family, and one of our family members is actually coming out of the closet. If it's a good family, that shouldn't be a problem. If the family somehow is prejudiced or whatever, then that member will be expelled from a family and people will need to go on with their lives. I think together as a community we need to figure out what we want there. So what about conferences? Well, if it's called the Perl Conference, that would imply Perl 5 only. So I would suggest changing the name. And I have suggestions for the names, like the Perl Community Conference, or the Tim Tody Conference, or spell it differently, Tim Tody Conference, or the Wallish Conference, or the Pully McBoatface Conference. That's Perl 5. Well, you come up with a bright idea. People have come up with like the Perl Family Conference or Perl and Friends Conference or stuff like that. Perlish Conference, yeah. So that's something actually people organizing this need to figure out. So what's the time scale we're looking at? I would hope for a few weeks to reach consensus. I think actually we're very close at consensus at the moment. There is a pull request now on which we can vote. The core developers can vote like in the next week, I think. The discussion of the issue that I raised has gone over 140 comments. It's a lot. Some of it is not so nice, but in general the sound is positive. Actual changes will come visible a few weeks after reaching consensus. I would say some changes may take years, I think books, and some others are easier, like this one, right? That's easy change to Camellia. However, there's one thing that became clear during the discussion, and Larry proposed the name Raku as an alias for Perl 6 last October. And specifically Damien Conway and other people have said maybe we should go for Raku. And I got convinced. So it will actually not be Camellia, but it will be Raku. That's the proposal. We'll see if it actually gets enough votes to go through with it. I sure hope so, because then we can all move forward. And this is what I basically did as a presentation in Demythifying Perl 6. It was actually about demythifying the Perl family. So that's my presentation. Do you have any questions? No questions? Everybody agree?
I have a question about the niche thing.
Yeah.
Repeat the question.
why do we need a niche? Is the question? That's a very good question. I have no idea why, but it seems to be a thing nowadays. Like having to have an IDE and having to have a demographic. These are marketing really issues, I think. And the remark was our niche is not to have a niche. I would say people would think that's an easy cop out, but yeah, well, okay, well, our niche could be gluing, super glue. Yes, that could be. We have some plans. Well, I have some plans for that anyway, but yeah, we'll see how things go forward. Maybe the question is because Python is really into data science, and maybe that's why people think of it as a niche. Yeah, I'm not sure how to answer that. I mean, that's. We'll find out our niche, and people will find a niche. I mean, JJ is creating a niche for concurrent evolutionary algorithms. So. And other people are using it for other stuff, like doing very boring financial stuff for EU regulations. It's boring. But it's sexy in the way that it's possible to do that while a competing program is basically not performing whatsoever. Oh, sorry, I didn't say that. Other questions? Okay then, thank you for listening, and hopefully we'll have a nice break and drinks and something, and I can sit down again. Thank you very much.